Hey guys, how's it going? Today's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the importance of self-education and just generally being able to teach yourself new things, especially in today's day and age. But I kind of want to go over the different ways that I educate myself on a variety of topics. Honestly, it doesn't even really matter what it is. I feel I'm kind of at a point in my life, and I kind of know how I learn. Where I feel like if there's a topic out there that I do want to learn, I feel like as long as there are resources on it, or I can figure out how to find resources on that topic, I can pretty much learn anything that I want. And it's a very important skill, just being able to teach yourself things, especially if you're interested in something. Like, for instance, if you're interested in programming and you want to be able to teach yourself in programming, especially before you end up pulling the trigger and going to, college or some sort of boot camp for coding, before you even know if it's right for you or if it's something that you actually want to do. And this is a common mistake, and honestly this is another, I guess, topic for a video that I'll probably end up doing again later. But essentially a common mistake, especially I guess younger people, but adults too, especially me, as when I was younger, I made this mistake. But the mistake of committing to going to school for something and spending a lot of money on something that you don't even really know if that's what you want to do. But it's really tough to figure that out, especially as a kid, just because you feel rushed by society and in general to do something with your life as soon as you're ending you're getting near to the end of high school, at least in the US. Not necessarily sure how it works in other countries, but I'm assuming it's probably pretty similar. But yeah, you get to the end of high school and your schools generally are forcing you to apply to colleges, even if you don't want to go to college, and your parents or your friends are all planning on going to oh, I'm going to this college for I don't know, marine biology or something super specific. And then at least me in high school, I was sitting there I don't even know what I want to do tomorrow. And my parents really wanted me to continue my education and go to college, but like my I don't come from a very wealthy background, so it was gonna have to take out student loans and pay for that. And it's after college, am I gonna be able to find a job in the field first of all? And if I can't, whatever job that I do end up finding, is it going to be enough to support me, financially, and be able to pay back this loan? Or is this something that's going to stick with me for, 10, 15, 20 years? And student loans are no joke, especially in the US. Again, I'm not entirely sure how that, works in other countries, but in the US, student loans are crippling sometimes, and it can be really depressing because it's essentially you're digging yourself a hole for the prospect of coming out on the other end, being more educated, I guess in a more specific skill set, and being able to make more money and just pay that loan back. And it sounds like an investment, right? Putting money in, and then over time that ends up bringing you in more money, than you put into it. And oftentimes, especially according to statistics, people who do get college education tend to make more than people who don't. But that all can be kind of avoided, especially in some of the fields. Of course, if you're going to be a doctor, or you're going to be some sort of specific profession that definitely requires schooling, or certifications and stuff like that, that are only really achievable through a traditional school system, then you kind of have to. You have to take that risk and kind of fully commit to that. But if you're not, say if you're going into something like computer science, or you're interested in a topic that is offered inside of a college, but you're not exactly sure if it's right for you or if it's what you want to do, then you have a lot of ways to go about figuring out if it's something that you want to pursue, Um, not even just like professionally, but like you want to pursue it in terms of like learning more and more in depth in that topic. And it's super important, especially early on, to be able to recognize that although everyone says that you have to go to college or you have to do something a certain way, like there are people who are extremely successful in the world who have not gone to college, and people who are doing really well in the like fields or like types of things that you're interested in, like without having a formal education in that topic. And a lot of these people are either like hobbyists or somebody who like had an interest in the topic and just went for it. They, for instance, like if you are a programmer or somebody who's interested in programming, you could feed yourself the excuse of like, oh, you know, like I don't know how to program at all. So before I even get started, I need to go enroll in a community college and take a bunch of courses for computer science. But that's just not true. You can very easily get started with a bunch of different resources online on how to learn these complex topics and skills like programming, because you know programming is not easy. Speaking from experience, but I'm pretty sure any programmer would tell you programming is definitely not easy, especially if it's not something that you've been doing for a long time. And even if you have been doing it for a long time, there are parts of it that are still really, really difficult. And if you're interested in programming, instead of stopping yourself from exploring that interest, and you know maybe it's exciting for you to think about like, oh, like maybe I can be a programmer and like eventually I can design like this app or some sort of like software feature that would make my life easier, whatever. Then like you have a why right there, and that is the most important part of almost just like being a human. Like having a why is what allows people to do things and overcome things that they normally wouldn't be able to do. And just figuring out first why you want to learn this thing and kind of exploring and dabbling with that will get you so much further than just signing up for a college course without even knowing whether or not you actually want to be a programmer. And if you're looking to self-educate, I usually, personally, this is the way that I go about it. I usually go the route of literature. So I'll grab a book on the topic. So, for instance, if I wanted to learn, I don't know, like Korean or some other language, then I would grab a book that is focused around teaching Korean. I would follow the book. I would read it and try to consume as much as I could, and then just kind of expose myself overall to the topics that are in that book. Sorry, I was banking really quick. And I would explore my interests that way and see if it's something that sticks. And once I have a little bit of exposure and I'm kind of understanding a little bit how things are working, then after that, I would go ahead and find like content that I like on the topic. And that content would be, for instance, if it was a foreign language, maybe there's like a TV show or something you like watching in that language, then I would watch that and use that to kind of like motivate myself to get even better and try to like learn and understand and comprehend the language and kind of use that to strengthen my why. Like, for instance, if I wanted to learn like Chinese because I thought it sounded cool, and I start learning Chinese and I realize like, oh, it's actually super difficult to learn, and my why is not a strong enough why for me to motivate myself, then eventually I'm not going to stick with that. And so you've got to find first the main reason. Obviously it would be the big why I'm learning this language is maybe because for me, it sounds really cool. I like the culture and I like the food. Like that's a good enough reason as any to go and learn another foreign language. And that doesn't mean you have to learn it to fluency. It might just mean that you have to learn it into a point that's effective for what you want the language for. Like what I mean by that is maybe I like Chinese food and I want to go to an authentic Chinese restaurant and be able to order my meal in Chinese and have a small conversation with the waiter or waitress. And you don't need to learn a whole bunch Chinese and be completely fluent in the language to be able to do something like that. And if you can just start small and figure out why you're wanting to learn something, then that alone makes the journey a little bit more clear. It gives you a direct like thing to aim for, and you can start funneling your learning practices to be more effective for that like specific purpose, as opposed to doing what people say is like the right way to learn a language. Oh, like you have to get a bunch of like vocab, a list of like the 1000 like most commonly used words or something like that, which like works for some people. But if you are somebody who finds themselves to not be very motivated or inspired, I think it's because you've got to figure out why it is that you want to do something and like what inspires you, and just follow the interest that's there, as opposed to going the traditional route of spending a bunch of money on like courses and trying to go to school for learning like a language or something like that. Like try it out on your own and get a book, maybe find some content that you like and see if it's enough to motivate your interests. And then, you know, after you study like that for a bit and you decide, you know, maybe school is the right choice for me and what I want, then by all means, like go to school for it. But before you dig yourself a giant hole, I'm speaking from experience because this is exactly what I did with computer science. I am still paying back my student loans currently. I've dug myself quite the hole with those. And before you dig yourself the hole, just explore the interest that's there. See what you can do with a limited amount of resources and information, and just like have fun with it and move on from there. And so the last thing I do want to talk about is being able to apply the things that you're learning in order to kind of increase the efficiency and effectiveness of like self-education. So there's a common term that comes from like people who are self-educating, and that's tutorial hell. And basically it's just the idea that people sit there and follow tutorials and get stuck following tutorials for a very long time, and eventually get to a point where they've done 5, 6, maybe even more tutorials and they still can't do anything on their own. And that comes from blindly following things that other people are telling you to do, as opposed to learning the underlying concepts that people are talking about and applying them on your own in ways that I guess resonate with you. So going back to the example of programming, you could follow a tutorial that teaches you how to build a full stack website from back end to front end, and you can set up like a whole database and updating and deleting functionality, all that fun stuff. But if you don't understand the concepts that I guess tutorial or program is teaching you, and you don't apply them to something that interests you, whether that's like a passion project or maybe just like you personally testing your knowledge on the subject, then how are you going to ever use that knowledge outside of a guided tutorial again? And so when it comes to self-education, it's super important that you're able to apply the things that you're learning to the actual activity. And another good example I can give of this is, let's say you play some video game competitively. I'm going to use Counter-Strike as an example just because that game's been around forever and I think most people have heard of it before. But let's say you're a Counter-Strike player and you watch a video on like peaking angles, which is like a huge fundamental in that game, like being able to properly peak an angle. And yeah, the concept might seem simple, like basic things like, oh, stand away from the corner of the angle so you can have like a better view of what's on the other side without exposing, you know, your entire character model and stuff like that. Or like the difference between like a right hand and left hand peek based on like how the game is modeled and things like that. And like that's all fine and dandy. That's great knowledge to have, but what good is it if you go and play an actual match and you resort back to your old habits and you don't apply the knowledge you gained from that video, right? And the way you would do that is by having a very conscious mind and thinking about, oh, okay, I listened to this video or I watched this video and it was talking about taking angles from like a further away distance from the corner, so that way I don't overexpose myself for less vision or less information. And now you have the conscious thought, and when you go into your next game, you should be consistently evaluating like, oh, am I playing this angle right, or is there a way that I can scooch back off this angle and apply that video or that lesson that I just learned? And you just do that consciously over and over again for a repeated amount of times until that becomes a habit. And it's super effective when you chunk out a skill, and when you're going to do like self-education, or like when you're going to improve with like resources on your own and like trying to teach yourself things. You have to be able to take parts of the skill, break it down, and just be very focused on applying that when you're actually in the situation. If the situation arises to where you can apply what you've learned and you don't take that opportunity, then you are essentially just wasting your time, because you spent the time to watch that tutorial or to listen to that video or read that book, and then when the opportunity came for you to solidify the information and the teachings, you just let it slip because you went into autopilot and you did what you were used to and what you were comfortable with, as opposed to taking a second to like think and realize like, oh, hey, you know, this is an opportunity for me to play back on this angle and really understand the concept of like what I just learned, and get to apply it and see like how much of a change that makes. And a lot of people say, you know, seeing is believing. Like a lot of people will not believe something that they don't see, um, for obvious reasons, right? And if you apply the things that you are learning, it's directly in front of you. You can see it, and you're applying it to things that you actually care about because it's like what you're actually doing. And self-education really starts at the beginning, when you have the opportunity to apply something you've, I guess, learned or came in contact with, and being able to consciously recognize that this is an opportunity and I need to apply what I've learned. And if you can do that, then you've put yourself essentially in a position where you can pretty much learn anything you want, as long as like obviously time is not a factor. Some people learn differently, learn slower than others, but or faster. But if you just give yourself the opportunity to actually apply the things that you learn, the concepts will stick, and you'll find that you're a lot more capable than you might have first thought. And another quote I kind of want to leave this video off with, it's a pretty powerful quote. I believe it comes from Mark Rippetoe or somebody in the weightlifting, I guess, area or niche. But the quote basically says that your limits are seldom where you think they are. And the concept can kind of be applied here, where a lot of people just don't realize that, you know, they're capable of learning these new and complex skills on their own, and they think that they need to go to school or like find some sort of formal education to have any sort of I guess effect with that skill, and it's just not true. I think you just need to be a little bit more confident in yourself and just give it a go. Follow that interest and the things that excite you, and whenever the opportunities come up, don't shy away from them. Apply yourself and apply the skills and teachings you've learned through like your self education endeavors, whether that's reading books, watching courses, YouTube videos, stuff like that. You know, you've got so many opportunities, and if your goal is to learn a new skill, especially for the new year, I would highly suggest you try and reframe that goal instead of having it like a blanket term of like, oh, I want to learn Counter-Strike in the new year, as opposed to that. Maybe reframe that goal a little bit to be something more specific. I want to apply the teachings that I learned in a tutorial that I watch for Counter-Strike, and that alone will set you off on the right path, get you started on improving a lot more effectively and efficiently than just kind of going into autopilot mode and doing what you normally do. And I just want to thank everybody again for all of the support on the videos recently. Thanks for all the comments, especially the kind words. If you guys have any feedback, I would love to hear from you guys, whether that's like video ideas or like things you want to hear about, or if you just want to share like your experiences and stories. I'm all for it. Again, thank you, and I will see you guys in the next video.